I can't believe I've not done a video on this study before. So this is probably up there with one of the biggest studies, one of the biggest papers that was published in sports science. So if you have never heard of this paper before, then get ready because this is pretty wild. Pre-warning, this is just for information purposes, so I'm not saying that you should do any of this stuff. But first, very quickly, my name is George. I am a published health researcher specializing in muscle health. For those of you who are new here, the aim of this channel is to give you the latest muscle science as and when the research comes out, rather than you waiting weeks or even months for it to come out in the mainstream media. So enough of that, let's get into this study. So first of all, let's talk about the setting. Where did this take place? Well, it was in California in the mid-90s. So the researchers put out an advert in the local newspaper and they recruited 50 men who had all had experience of lifting in the gym before. On average, these guys were in their late 20s, they had a pretty normal BMI, but before they could take part in the study, the researchers asked them had they ever taken steroids in the past. If they said yes, they couldn't take part. If they said no, then they might have been eligible. So with this group of young guys, they split them up into 4 groups. Now for a period of 10 weeks, they were randomly assigned to receive either weekly injections of 600 milligrams of testosterone enanthate or the equivalent dose of a placebo solution, which was most likely saline, so salt water. Now within each one of those groups, they were then further split into 2 more groups. Some of them would come back to the gym at the research center and do 3 days a week of supervised exercise training, which was basically a bodybuilding style workout. The other half were asked to basically not do any exercise at all for the 10 weeks. Now, one of the things that the researchers bragged about quite a bit in this paper is they actually controlled their diet quite tightly. So they prescribed them a diet that was relative to each one's body weight. Okay, so that is what they were asked to do for the 10 weeks, but what were the researchers interested in? What were they looking at measuring? Well, I was actually pretty shocked when I read this list of measurements because it is quite in-depth. And for the most part, they actually used quite highly accurate and expensive tools to measure these things. So lean mass is obviously something they were interested in, and they measured that using hydrostatic weighing, which is essentially where you weigh someone underwater, and because of the different density of muscle and fat, you can get an idea of body composition. Then to look at the size of specific muscles, they used an MRI scanner, which again is highly accurate. And to measure strength, they used very practical measures. So they did a 1 rep max bench and a 1 rep max squat. So the moment you've been waiting for is across these 4 groups, what did they find? Well, first of all, when they analysed everyone's bloods, it was pretty clear who had been taking the testosterone. In the people who had testosterone injections, whether they'd been exercising or not, their total serum testosterone went up 6-fold, whereas in the placebo group, there was no change. So something was happening on a biological level, but did that then translate to more muscle mass or more strength gain? So let's start off with those who were receiving saltwater injections, so not testosterone. Well, within this group, those who were training for the 10 weeks, they actually gained 2 kilograms of fat-free mass. And unsurprisingly, the group that quite frankly very much drew the short straw in this study, so those who were given saltwater injections and were told not to exercise for 10 weeks, they didn't gain any fat-free mass. But if we look at the people who were taking testosterone and training, they gained 6 kilograms of fat-free mass in 10 weeks, which is pretty impressive, but I think we're all interested in the other group, the ones that took the testosterone but didn't actually train. Well, they actually gained 3 kilograms of fat-free mass. And when the researchers looked at the MRI scans, they saw that they'd actually gained muscle in their quadriceps and in their triceps. And again, this is without doing any exercise, just receiving the testosterone injections. So that was muscle mass, but what about muscle strength? Well, to be fair, the natural group who were training actually gained quite a bit of strength. So without any testosterone, they gained 10 kilograms on their bench press and about 25 kilos on their back squat. However, more bad news for the naturals, the people who were taking testosterone doubled this. They put on about 20 kilos on their bench and 40 kilos on their squat. But once more, what happened to those who were taking testosterone that weren't exercising at all? Well, their bench press didn't actually change much, but they did add 10 kilograms to their back squat. So overall, is there anything that we can take from this study? And what do I take from it? Well, one thing that is blatantly obvious that this study has shown is that taking 600 milligrams of testosterone enanthate every week for 10 weeks is going to cause enormous gains in muscle mass and strength when you are pairing it with weight training. In fact, in this study, they gained about 3 times as much as those who were not taking testosterone. And the next point that is controversial, it seems like taking testosterone and not training is pretty much just as effective at building muscle as not taking testosterone and training for 10 weeks. Now, there are many mechanistic and theoretical reasons as to why this might be, and I'll happily go into my thoughts if you want to hear them, so do comment below if you want to see me do another video on this. But with that all being said, there are a few caveats. Now, overall, because of dropouts throughout the study period, I think they ended up with about 10 or just short of 10 in each group, which is not a huge number of people for for a study like this, so we can only draw so many conclusions. Also, importantly, this was a lot of testosterone that they were giving these people. So to give you some idea, it's roughly 6 times the amount that you would get from a typical kind of starting TRT cycle. And although they didn't see any negative health effects throughout this study, they were only measuring participants up to about 3 months. So after that, we don't know what happened to people. So again, this was just an informative video. It's quite interesting to read studies like this. I don't entirely know if this would get approved by an ethics committee nowadays, so it is interesting to look back and see what some of these more outlandish studies found. So thanks very much for watching, everyone. If you like these sort of videos, do hit subscribe, and I'll see you soon in the next video.